Welcome back to Canter Therapy Podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, if you're enjoying the conversations we're bringing you, please take a moment to hit follow and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps us reach more horse owners and equestrians who are passionate about learning and improving life with their horses. Canter Therapy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Catherine Christensen and myself, Dr. Shelley Appleton. If you'd like to support the podcast, the best way to do so is by checking out our Canter Therapy Podcast merchandise, as well as our clinics, workshops, courses, and educational resources. You can find out more about both of us and everything we have available by visiting the Canter Therapy Podcast website, which you'll find at cantertherapy.com.au. Now, I am genuinely excited to bring you this conversation with Josh Nichol. Josh is one of the most thoughtful and insightful horsemen that I've had the pleasure of speaking with, and this episode explores everything from horse behaviour and biomechanics to leadership, personal growth, communication, and what it really means to understand the horse beneath the behaviour. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we enjoyed having it. Now, let's get stuck into this episode. Good morning, Kat.
Good morning, Shelley. You excited this morning?
Yes, very, because I've wanted to get Josh Nichols. G'day, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
I wanted to get Josh on the podcast for a while. I've just had a bit of a problem with all our clinicking and stuff clashing for being able to do an episode. But I finally have got Josh all the way from Alberta and very excited to get you on here, Josh. So welcome. Now, our first question to you is, actually, I'm going to throw you a deliberate curveball. If you had to describe yourself, right, in 2 minutes, like an elevator story, and you had to explain who you were, what would you say?
I think that I would say that I'm a person who likes to understand things. I try not to get caught up on fads, but I just want to understand what it means to live a good life, be in good relationships, understand the truth around the animals I work with, and let them show themselves to me instead of try to make them fit into my world. I think everything's about a blending. We're trying to be together, but the way I'm trying to, do what I do with horses and dogs and cattle and all the other creatures I get to exist with is, by understanding them and letting them tell me about what works for them more than me imposing my views upon them.
Oh, look, like you just entered our top 3 top responses to that question. So you're a horseman, you're a horse trainer, you're a clinician. Anything else that we should add to that?
I guess my whole focus in life, I just, I want to understand myself. I want to know, I want to live in a way where I can enjoy life. So I guess learning to be at peace with myself and, what does that mean? I think most of us inherently are pretty, trying to be happy, trying to have good relationships, but bouncing around and struggling with that. And so I guess I think that would be a big part for me. Personal development, personal growth, a sense of leadership for myself. Yeah, training horses, working cattle. I've cowboyed my whole life. And family man, family's a big deal to me. My kids are kind of joining me in this whole endeavor, and that's been more rewarding than I could have ever imagined. I never expected that. And just enjoying life. All
right, Josh, you've got to tell us how it all started. So where did you grow up? Were horses always part of it?
Yeah, actually, I was born in Northern Ontario, which is more on the eastern end of Canada. And we lived way up in the middle of nowhere. My dad was a logger, and we lived up in a very small town. And we had horses there since I could remember. My mom and dad loved horses, and they spent lots of time with them. My initial engagement with horses I had no sense of training, though. I had no sense of, my mom and dad rode and we spent time with them, but the idea of training just didn't even exist. It was just a matter of, because we didn't have television or any kind of technological connection to the world. So that almost all my time outside with the animals. And so for my first 12 years, I would ride and I would do things, but it was very organic as a horse connection could be. And then when I was 12, we moved to Alberta, and Alberta is way more actively doing things with horses, and training is actually a thing. So that was kind of a crazy curveball for me to kind of enter this world where now it was about training the horses to do this or to do that. And, and then it was a lot initially because there was so many different styles. There were so many different ways. There was people doing it, very dominance based. There was other people that were, treats. And it was just this crazy amount of information. So then it engaged me like crazy. I was so enthralled by training and with the horses. And then we were able to get some more horses when we got here. And then I started learning from different people all over the place. I was just very thirsty and hungry. And what that did is it actually created a lot of opportunities for me because I was willing to sleep in the back of a horse trailer or, do chores or whatever. It didn't matter. So I spent the next, 6 or 7 years. So I kind of started really into that when I was 15. And then I think for the next 6 years, I traveled and learned as often as I possibly could afford time away from school and then university. I went to university for 6 years and I got a science degree with concentrations in biology, economics, and environmental studies. My intention was never to train horses for a living or to teach. I just had intentions of building my own environmental impact business. But in the process of traveling and meeting so many people, I just had people calling me all the time to try and ask for help or send me horses. And I turned them down like crazy. So I traveled with a fellow by the name of Harry Whitney, and he was so influential in my base, just as a good human, but also a great horseman. And I spent about a year with him throughout a 3-year period in my late teens. And, I would say above all, like Harry's influenced my horsemanship. Obviously it set a massive base, but just the man he was and how he mentored me was just amazing. The very last thing that I did with Harry was when Tom Dorrance, Ray Hunt was putting on Tom Dorrance's benefit when Tom had to have heart surgery. And Harry was involved in that. And the very last thing I did was watch this event. And I had met lots of people with Harry, and that was amazing. But that event drew in almost anybody who had ever been influenced by Tom. So the very last thing I did there was observe all of these amazing guys out in the world. So when I went home from that, I was just, like, who am I to do anything like this? When you have all of these amazing people in the world. So when I went home, I was interested in starting my business. And then there's a ranch that I've worked with, that is a neighbor of mine. They run a large number of cattle. And so then I started working for them, and I started working at a mill, and the phone would not stop ringing. People were calling and asking me to take horses on and start helping, and we put them off. And long story short, I could get into all those details, but it just got to a point where I started taking horses on and then started training. And first I started training for the public, and I didn't like that at all. I didn't like the restrictions. I really feel the struggle with the training world is that the people that give you their horse are the ones that set the parameters around what the trainer is supposed to do in the timeline. And that is about as silly as it gets. Like when someone brings you something for help, but then they decide the parameters you need to work in, that's exactly opposite. So when a person brings me a horse, I would like to be able to give them some sense of how much it would take, what the timeline would take to get to their expectations, and then see if they're okay with that. So I ended up getting away from training to the public, and then I started only training for my students, which was really cool. But it also had its highs and lows, because sometimes people would bring you horses that just weren't going to work for them. And so it was a unique thing. But over the time, and I'm sure you see the exact same thing, is that you recognize that there are very little horse issues. It's mostly people. And to really help people, we got to start helping horses. So then I went a little stronger into the teaching. And now the rest is history. It's just taken off. I never planned it. I never even tried to make it happen. It just kept growing, and now I'm here.
Hey, Kat, it's like we met someone from our planet. I would describe you, Josh, as the horses chose you. That's right. Then the people chose you as well. Right. So much just in what you said there is absolutely fascinating, from your childhood of not having TV and things like that, where your curiosity was allowed to be set on fire. A great love for animals and interest in animals. But oh my God, okay, so Harry Whitney. Harry Whitney, I have never met. Hopefully, before the day I die, could I meet him? I'm very much influenced by the people that have worked with him. What a great man. So that's exciting. All the way down for what you've done and seen in your life.
So, can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing when you were with Harry? What sort of stuff did you learn? What was your takeaways? What's your like biggest memories?
Well, there's some details I still don't have answers to, but before I went to Harry, I actually, my parents and I went down and met Dr. Deb Bennett, and Deb said that there was a couple different people that I need to go meet, and Harry was on that list. So then
Yeah.
I went the very next summer. I went down to see Harry, and he was teaching a clinic. He was down by the round pen. Everyone was up in the crowd, and I was a very I don't say confident, but I was like, nothing really held me back when I was kind
Yeah.
of knew what I was after. So I just grabbed a chair and I went down and sat right beside him. And, it was, I started chatting with him and he was trying to teach and whatever. But I was just so engaged in what was going on. And he was working this young horse, and it didn't take very long. And I said, Harry, if you need me to do anything, I'm happy
Yeah.
to get involved. And by the end of it, I obviously asked, is there any way I can come and ride with you? Or, I'll just do anything. And by that point, I think it was clear to Harry that I would, so then, yeah, I traveled around. I can't believe he didn't say no to me, like when I first asked, but so I'm not sure if he talked to Deb or if I still don't know. Nobody's really said anything to me. We just kind of went at it. But Harry put up with me. I was a teenager. I was just a punk kid, but I was so keen. And like, I have
Yeah.
pictures of myself when I'm sitting on a horse in the corner and I'm wearing shorts and no shoes and I have a cutoff shirt and a ball cap on backwards, and I'm riding a horse for, Harry's got me doing something, and I would get on any colt, anything he asked me to do, I would just do it.
I trusted him.
And yeah, sometimes I slept on the table in his trailer. Sometimes I was in the back of the trailer. And yeah, he just took me on and he traveled and I went with him. And honestly, I
Yeah.
still can't believe he did it, because it was kind of a big thing for him to commit to a kid like that. And, I'm sure I was pretty trying to him sometimes, but I'm so thankful. I'm so
Oh, but
thankful.
Josh, like you work with people now, when you get those, and they are those unicorn souls that like
Mm-hmm.
lock into you, they want to
Mm-hmm.
listen and they want to
Yeah.
know, but that you
Mm-hmm.
meet yourself
Yeah.
from back
Right.
then, and how
Mm-hmm.
exciting that is to
Mm-hmm.
see someone that you don't have to convince or control, that just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and I suppose it's a thing of trust up front that they're
Mm-hmm.
doing.
Right.
And a lot of people get that way, but they've got to get trust first.
Mm-hmm.
But when you meet someone like that, a
Yeah.
client like that,
Yeah.
another human being like that, how
Yeah.
exciting that is for you as
Mm-hmm.
like a master of your craft. So I
Yeah.
can see jolly well why he had you doing
Mm.
stuff, because that would have been a buzz for him as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he enjoyed it. I hope that I made his life easier too in some ways, that I was able to kind of maybe crawl on some horses and, he got to tell me what to do. But boy, did I ever get a ton of experience. That was probably the best bet. Just, yeah, I tried to be his hands as much as I could and try not to get in the way and let my teenager-ness, yeah, overwhelm him. But no, it's pretty cool.
No, it's all because of Harry. So Harry influenced a lot of people here in Australia that I got
Mm-hmm.
to meet. One of them is Ross Jacobs. Another
Mm-hmm.
one is a gentleman I did a podcast with a couple of weeks ago who is a special human being called Peter Cowell. Both have been heavily influenced by Harry Whitney. But I never forget with Ross, I love his writings, and I got an opportunity to go and see him in real life. And I just sat there watching
Mm-hmm.
him for the first 2 hours. I thought he was crazy, until I finally saw what he was talking about, which was horses' thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I
Right.
could see basic behavior. I didn't realize that's
Mm-hmm.
all I could see, but
Mm-hmm.
him flapping and clapping and doing things, he just looked like a crazy, messy person,
Mm-hmm.
until I finally saw what he was talking about. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
that whole line comes from Harry. Then,
Mm-hmm.
interesting talking to Peter, it's just like that whole concept of,
Mm-hmm.
well, to reinforce behavior, you release on the slightest try. But
Mm-hmm.
what if you can see a try that no one else can?
Right.
That's the thing. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so tell us about that. Did you get something similar from him about learning about their thoughts, or when to
Yeah.
release, or how to
Mm-hmm.
influence their thoughts?
Actually, Ross and I were at Harry's at a very similar time. So I met
Yeah.
Ross, personally
Yeah.
when he would come and spend time with Harry in Arizona, where and I was traveling with Harry, which was very cool. Yeah, yeah, honestly, Harry was a groundbreaker on being able to recognize what was going on inside of a horse's mind, and we generally live in a technique based culture that focuses on being able to see the physicality of things. And for a horse, by the time it's in action, it's already been a thought, it's been an energy, there's been a transfer of that into the muscles. There's a lot that's happened for a horse. So if you're only ever watching the body, you're almost late on what happened mentally. And Harry he's just a master at being able to feel what's happening behind the movements. And just like the cool part for me is that was the base of my culture. Like I was grounded in being able to try to feel a horse's thoughts and recognize the conversation that we're having on a thought level at my base. So that was a huge piece, being able to read a thought, observe a thought, change a thought, flow with the thought. Like it was all based on being able to guide and shape a thought so that the feet would follow. So you're not then, and that's really kind of like the fork in the road in a lot of ways, because there's so much conversation and it's such a polarized deal of, do you work the feet to get to the brain, or do you go to the mind and the feet follow? And from Harry's lineage and that style, obviously you are impacting the feet, but you are primarily changing the thought and the feet follow. So now it's a much more, I would say, universally authentic relationship, because, I like to think that really good concepts generally flow well into other elements of life. And if they're not necessarily great concepts, they don't kind of have that same fluidity. And, like really working the feet to get the mind is a little bit like trying to move someone around so they can understand something. And you can do that. Like if I wanted you to understand something, I could physically shape you and then you might figure it out. Or I could help you understand it and then you take your own body. So I'm not saying it's one or the other. It's not really. But when you really understand that at the center of it, there's a mind that's trying to understand something, then you're flowing and shaping the mind, and then the body starts to follow. Now that's where true softness comes. I talk a lot about the difference between lightness and softness, and softness is understanding the mind, and lightness is moving the physical body. And you can make an art out of both. But what I've noticed is you won't connect with the being quite as much without that inner softness element being your the primary effect. So
Yeah. For me personally, what it did by being able to look at that level is that it allows you to actually reinforce or target or influence more than just the behavior, because it's like you can feel the fluency of your idea going into them, and you can start releasing or targeting different things. And I remember watching Ross and finally seeing it's like, oh my God, okay, you can see the brace. I can see brace. Like there's brace. And I remember I raced home and I just started backing a horse up, asking it forward. And it was really interesting. It's like, wow, I can feel this going through, and I can feel it hitting a block, and I can smooth that out, and I can tell it just really increased, I suppose, that concept of feel, of that, and being able to observe and feel. So it was super powerful. So I can only imagine having that as my base. Like, wow.
Yeah. Well, the mind is an amazing thing, and the way I look at it is the muscles are the storage point for their thoughts, their emotions, their experiences. So by being able to feel the inside of a horse and not just prioritize the movements they made, you can actually, that's to me the difference between really connecting with someone and then them feeling safe with you and being able to let things go versus a person just doing something for you. So then being able to feel those tension lines, that truly is what creates safety for a horse, is that they actually start letting things go for you instead of just knowing what they're supposed to do for you. And what I found is that that's actually the heart. So for my work, for me, it's not so much about a philosophy that sounds good. I want a philosophy that's going to work well under pressure. Our lives are very much in it, whether it's cattle work or, rodeo or showing or whatever, your work has to bear fruit in an environment where pressure exists, because that's the daily environment. So I just love that, because I actually don't want to have thoughts that just sound good in my head. Like I don't really care. I want them to work. And I've said this a million times. When I find better thoughts, I'll trade anything I have. I don't have any pride to it, because in the end, anybody who knows already knows, and you're just going to look down to the people that have a sense that's better than you anyway. So, who are you trying to impress?
Oh, we've got lots to talk about. Kat, anything else you want to delve into with Josh at this point in time?
I'm interested. Shelley's mentioned that you have a framework that she really loves, and I'd love to hear more about that.
I have to introduce this a bit more, right?
Okay.
I have to introduce this because if we want to go there, I'm very excited about it.
Mm.
You see, Josh, my background, my PhD is in critical thinking, right?
Mm.
So I am fascinated by how people frame things to get people to learn. So I kind of I kind of am a connoisseur of people of going, okay, that's your frame. Like I'll give you an example is I adore Amy Skinner's frame where she looks at everything as posture of making sure that we create good habits from all our interactions. So all these frames for people to kind of understand the importance of things, to help them be consistent, to help them understand things. There's other frames, like I suppose some of the more horsemanship programs. It's all about gaining a horse's respect and control of their feet. That's one particular framework as well. But yours is super clever on a number of levels, right? It's just not clever because it works, is that it dials into people, especially women's natural wiring. And I like it. It's clever. It's relational. It's relationship. So please unpick this for us because it is brilliant. It is super clever on levels that are not just good for the horse. It's for the people to be able to conceptually understand the importance of it. Okay, so go for it. Explain.
Oh, thank you. Well, the first part of my element is that I always have to dive into how a person actually looks at the horses. I feel like how you've interpreted horsemanship is actually the power that moves your energy, and then how your energy moves is gonna manage your pressure and the things you move. So if you can't get on the same page with mindset, that's the most empowering form of communication. So I look at horses based on a few different lenses, but the first is, what I call relational horsemanship, or a more mindful approach to horsemanship, is that the struggles that horses have are primarily about needs. And those could be physical needs. It could be, their soundness. It could be their health. But on a more emotional level, it's also mind, space, and pressure. So there's these elements of life that they actually have to understand how to manage or have peace with. And if they can't, it drives them crazy. Okay, and so then when it drives them crazy, that's where behaviors bloom out of that garden, so to speak. And then when we chase behavior, if we're chasing behavior, and our mindset isn't clean, what ends up happening is that we emotionalize behavior, and we look at it as respect and disrespect and behavior, and now we feel charged to actually activate that. So what I would also call then a more mindful horsemanship style would allow us to see what's going on inside of a horse, and it actually ends up diminishing the negative charge in us so that we can deal with it in a positive way. So it would be like, one day you're really struggling and you strike out, and if I see that just as behavior, now we're arguing. But if I have the ability to kind of look past that, it's a little bit like, hey, how's everything going today? Like there's something else going on. And then I can actually have the power now to lead that conversation into its true state, which would be what's happening here, rather than us just bickering about the expressions. So then a more reactive emotional horsemanship approach would say, when your horse has a behavior, you interpret it in a negative state. The horse is being bad, needs to be dealt with, which now that charges my emotions to use my pressure, which at its root is the biggest problem we see with the function of pressure. It's not pressure in itself. It's the charge that it comes with.
Yeah.
And I say that all the time. A person can say thank you with zero thankfulness and make you feel disrespected by the way they say it. So the power is not in the words, it's in what's happening behind it. Okay, so then we take an animal that is a frequency-based creature. They feel everything. And then we don't realize how powerful the charge is that we give to stuff. So the very first thing I do is I want to focus on mindset. I want to really get on the same page so that we're kind of like trying to figure out what the need is that's missing here, which actually takes all the negative charge out of the conversation and allows us to lead ourselves, because we're not led then by a negative mindset. And then it's to start understanding our horses. So if we look at the horses, now we have to understand their needs. And 90% of miscommunication is based on unmet needs. And I have an unmet need. And now what is offended in a conversation is not necessarily a thing you said, but how I'm feeling unheard or unseen or whatever. And then it turns into this big mess. And it's never about the thing we're talking about. It's about that deeper core root. Okay, and that's where it starts to become more relationship based, because that's kind of everything. So then when we can understand what's going on under the surface, now we can actually understand why the behavior stems out of it. So then I talk about the three needs of a horse, and that's mind, space, and pressure. And horses need to understand how to exist within, find peace within, and control those three elements. So mind, some horses are more mind-based. They're very aware of what's going on in their world. They would be more herd-bound. They need to see what is bothering them. It's like they're not necessarily scared of it, but they've got to see it. This would be more of a mind horse. A space horse, these are the ones that just want to feel you. They want to engage you. They need to sense you. And if they can't, that's where nipping and pinning their ears and more aggressive tendencies come. And then the pressure horses are, how do I control pressure? And often the function that they learn is that I have to just get away from it. So the problem in that is that then horses are actually getting away in fear. They're not internally not or more okay. So then
they're not understanding it. They just
no
kind of running away. Yeah.
Well, and then they're operating to us in a more predatorial state. So they're getting away from us. So we're actually not inspiring a deeper connection. And so then once you understand that it's up to us to help them meet that need in a more relational way, because they won't do it on their own. Like horses aren't gonna, they don't look at it and say, how can we do this in a different way? They just need to figure it out and to control it, right? They're very primitive in their thinking style when they get worried. So that's it, and I don't know how deep you want me to get into any one of those, but primarily first, mindset. We got to get on the same page with how we're looking at this problem. Secondly, we have to understand what the horse's needs are. And then third, we have to take more responsibility with how we're showing up in this conversation. And if you're not aware of how you're showing up and you're blaming everything on the horse, everything you're doing is creating a frequency that's actually distorting this conversation. So if I'm going through life and every time I feel pressured, I'm snapping and I'm retracting and I'm closing off, or, I'm constantly building the vibrations in myself that are not manifesting what is going to help a horse. And because we recognize that every little herd is going to be different based on the leadership style of that group. So you have one horse who's just like, I have a guy out here, he's 25. I've had him since he's a yearling. And his leadership style is just like this calm, consistent presentation. And it doesn't matter what herd he's in, he settles everybody. And then there's another horse that we just brought in, and he's a little bit more dominant. And that herd is always messy, because he's not okay. Well, that then puts more responsibility on us in our presentation of ourselves. Like, how are we showing up? So that over the years has put so much onus on me in my own personal development to say, okay, well, how are you showing up, Josh? Like how are you presenting yourself? What is the horse feeling from you? Like, what are you guys feeling from me? Like that's my responsibility in this conversation and with my horses. So that's kind of like the mix of the leadership side. And then the athletic side, just quickly, is just, I don't have a frame of how I want horses to look. All I want to know is how each horse is built to move and carry themselves. So I'm always looking for what I call flow lines. And the flow lines are the revelation of truth and movement. So then we need to be seeking flow lines, and flow lines help you find self-carriage, and self-carriage with muscle develops collection. So that's like super Cole's notes around like a lot of stuff.
So fascinating. So what you do, which is so brilliant, is that you target the human superpower of analytics. You get them thinking, you get them teaching them to see things, to make assessments, instead of just reactive what to do, how to fix this, how to solve the problem that they don't want, and this desire for the horse just to do what it's told and not make them feel vulnerable. You're flicking the switch on that, which is that's a very cool way to do it. Now, can I ask, how do you introduce people to your way of working with a horse? Is it in a round yard? Is it on the end of the rope in groundwork? What is yours? Is it under saddle? Is it with a cow? How do you introduce it?
Yeah, many different ways. I want, as I've, people get a little bit more connected to my style. More often people kind of know what they're going to get, but depending on where I am, sometimes, we are in a round pen and we start offline. I enjoy that place because it's, you've kind of like dropped all your connections and
Yeah.
you're just now present. And it's kind of like, how do
Yeah.
you show up with your horse? And when you ask questions, what do you do? Like, how do you, because one of the things I want is that I kind of try to think about it's almost like marriage counseling. You listen to the person and then you listen to the horse and then you got to try to put them together in a better deal, where sometimes what people want is they just want their horse to do what they want. But the problem with that is that they're never changing the reason the horse didn't do what they wanted.
Yeah.
They're just looking for a new technique. And that's the biggest problem with it, is just, and so that's the reason why I don't just tell people what to do, because in our world of horsemanship, we don't just need more techniques anymore. Like, just type online techniques to make our horse go around. There's a gazillion. So we need to know why these techniques aren't working. We don't need more. So that's kind of inspired me to really push into that kind of, deeper awareness piece. But yeah, I start people generally where, however far back I need to take them to help them get to where they want to be at the quickest rate.
Yeah. So what if you had your ultimate, if I just
Mhm.
presented you with a person and go, right, you're going to really show this person your process and you get to pick your ultimate kind of place,
Yeah.
and just say they're a lovely human being, they're in their 40s,
Yeah.
they might have had a number of years off riding, or they had kids, etc. They've gone and bought a nice horse, but things have become a little unsettled. And they've lost their confidence a bit with their horse, and they come to you and they go, Josh, help me. I'll do whatever you say is
Yeah.
the best.
Right. Cool. Generally what ends up happening is I want them to be able to, either in their pen with the horse or in a round pen, I want them to let the horse offline, and I want them to stand in that space, and I want them to talk to me a bit. So what ends up happening is, as soon as they're not talking to the horse, they're just talking to me, what happens is it's a more somatic experience as to how they're engaging the horse now. So you read a ton of stuff just based off how they're, because they're talking to me. It's like, okay, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about your horse. And I want to knock the barriers down. There's this funny thing with people in clinics and teaching now, where the students feel that there is some pressure on them to have it all together.
Yeah.
And teachers can speak with, arrogance and just, discrediting, it's like, but I feel like it should be opposite. The pressure should be on the teachers. The students just need to show up and try their best, but they're there because they don't know what to do. So anyways, I want to create an environment where people feel that. So then through our basic conversation, I'm going to feel that. I want to learn about how they interact more unconsciously, so I can really find, once you see their unconscious patterns, and that's the hard thing, because people don't know, we don't spend any time understanding our own frequency, our own energy, or our unconscious tendencies. We need others to help us with that because we're so married to ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I want to see. Once I can see what their unconscious patterns are, now I see what their horse sees. And that's where the real change begins, because then I'm advocating for why their horse is struggling, rather than trying to just get them to get what they want from their horse. Because as soon as you can meet the horse's need, they'll do whatever you want. Like, horses.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like all of us know, it's like you work with horses, you realize that they are the most gentle, trainable creature at the moment. Like, I got a puppy at the moment, right? And he's gorgeous. He's a good pup, but it's just like, man, dogs are harder than horses.
Yeah.
And totally. I just want people to be able to know what we know is that they're so gentle. They really are the most gentle creatures, and they're so damn easy to train. It's if we just strip all the expectations and the ignorance and the naivety of people and get them to see that, it's really profound.
Part of what I would say I like to do.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Okay, so you get them in there, you talk to the person, you get them kind of to reveal their coping mechanisms of life, their natural pattern set of how they kind of protect themselves or their go-to things. You talk to them, you ask them questions to ground themselves and to anchor them. So you bring them down by that relational conversation you have. And then what do? Do you get them to start observing the horse, doing something with the horse? How does that work? Because I'm super fascinated by this.
The very next thing I do is I want them to show me something that they do. Because what happens when people come, and I have an example of this. I went to a classical dressage training barn one time, and I rode with a guy, and and he gave me a bridle, and I walked into this stall with a bullfighting stallion, and it was like this horse was just big, and it's like I couldn't even bridle him, but partly because I was like I didn't really know how to do, and it's like it's so easy when you're trying to do what someone else wants you to do in a foreign environment where you just look like an idiot because you're just all fingers and toes now, and you don't even know what you're doing. So I don't like to start people by saying, okay, I want you to do all of these things, ABC of my stuff, because that is the quickest way for a person to feel incompetent and lose their confidence. So the very first thing I say is, I'm just like, what if you were to do some groundwork, what would you do? And some people put the lead rope back on and others move them around in the round pen. But I want to start feeling how their energy moves. Because again, the advocacy of the horse is that you have to keep looking at the person more from the horse's lens. And then sometimes people, they get into the horse's space and they're immediately energetically retracting, or they think what they want and all of a sudden it's a whack with the stick, or, it's like you start reading where some of these issues are starting to stem. So I would say for the first half of that session, all I'm doing is I'm going to have them do stuff and I want to talk them through it. And I want to ask them for clarity. Like, tell me a little bit about what you're thinking when you do that, so I can really, I want to be really grounded in myself in understanding without making assumption, because I'm sure you recognize this after a number of years of clinicking. It's so easy to start making quick assumptions like, oh, yeah, I know what you're doing and I know why, and I've got it all sorted. And then I sit on a soapbox and I just tell a big old story about why this is happening. And it's the most useless thing, but we end up getting off on it as teachers and talking to the crowd. But my deal is I want to make sure I'm very much so really reading what's happening. And I actually find that the more advanced in it I get, the more I listen, not less. Because if I'm going to really help this person, like really make a change, then I have to be really sure I'm not misreading the scenario. And then once we've got that, then we start talking about it. And this is where I have to be really careful. I want to say I'm an empowerer. I'm not a therapist, and I try not to be, because it's so easy to cross this ground, especially when a person starts to open their space and feel vulnerable. What I will do is I'll start sharing with them what I'm interpreting the horse is reading in the way they present themselves. And the reason it becomes emotional is because they start making attachments. Holy smokes, that's what's happening in this relationship, and I'm doing that here. And and so then I really try to stay very kind of focused on the way you're presenting your space. Here's what the horse is reading. And then I try to stay very focused on, let's just focus on making this shift with how you're talking space. Let's just make this shift with how you're thinking mind. So I try to focus on more of an empowering perspective around what we've learned the horse is seeing. And that becomes primarily the answer to fixing behavior. Because again, as we said, horses are easy to train, but it's like, why is your horse not doing that simple exercise? Well, let's figure it out, and it's understanding what the horse cared about rather than just trying to pressure them through. And if we do lean on the fact that horses are amazing animals that just want to get by and they're super kind, if they're struggling, then we need to figure out what is it that we're putting in there that's causing that struggle.
Yeah, definitely. Kat, what would you like to know?
Where do you bring your liberty into this? So you're doing round pen work, and then I'm like, am I stepping on the questions you want to ask, Charlie?
No, because that's okay. We can go there and then we'll come back. Because I told Josh you've got to mount a case for me for liberty work.
Yeah. So tell us about how you include liberty work into this and why you think that that's important.
Yeah, it's a great question. Just a first state, I think one of the biggest struggles with so much of this is that we can see any one thing done in so many different ways. And, sometimes it can make things look horrible and then the next person makes it look amazing, but for me, what I'm looking for in my work is obviously a horse being able to loosen and bend their body is such a crucial piece to being able to kind of like know what's in the fabric of the muscles. Are they letting go? Are they able to feel like they can interact with us? I talk about receiving state all the time, and receiving state is how well do the muscles receive what you're saying? Like, are they taking it in, or are they just getting away from you? Okay. So then when we talk about the three needs, I talk about mind, space, and pressure. One of the first things that I want to see is I want to be able to use pressure to actually help a horse understand they can control pressure by staying mentally connected with me. So that's now they're learning to control pressure by mentally hooking on. Okay. Now I also want a horse to be soft and responsive to my space. So there's this synergistic center, and I call it the mind space balance. It's the beautiful balance point between a horse responding to my space, but also not mentally running away from me.
Not
So if they're
leaving.
responding to my space, but I have to contain them, this now lets us creep into a more control-based style.
Yeah.
If I can't add any pressure or my horse will run away, so I can't use space. See, now we've got this kind of like polarized perspective. I can do nothing, or I'm going to do whatever and get them to move. So the mind space balance is essentially is my liberty work, but it's more of an expression of a connection of the three needs and movement. So now my horse responds to my space, and if their mind starts to go too far, I'll apply a little pressure and draw their eye back. Pretty soon what happens is a horse will bend on the circle around me. And so I guess it's called liberty. But to me, it's not the dance of liberty, because you can make a horse go around you so they don't get whacked on the butt, you know. But to me, it's actually this felt connection of the needs in the expression of movement. Okay, and now what I want to do is then I put the bridle on that. So now what happens is the connection of the bridle isn't about containment, because the horse was already demonstrating that they weren't trying to get away from you, but they were also still very responsive. Our leg aid needs to be responsive. They need to be, when you ask, they need to respond. But if that response chases them away and I need to contain them, now the connection of my hands starts to actually build internal tension because I'm holding. And there's where the cookie crumbles, because containment's fine, I guess, like not really, but it's fine.
No.
But if you really want a horse to use their body, they can't be holding tension within themselves.
Yeah.
So now we have this massive loss at the basic element of the definition of the reins, which is I'm going to hold you and you're going to stay. Versus if I have a place where they can respond to me, they are with me, their body's committed, and then I place the bridle on top of that. Now what I have is this anchored position where I know I'm defining my bridle in a pure state. Okay. Now, and then there's just life, and sometimes it gets messy, and sometimes you know it's like if you don't, that's like I don't want people.
But for the most part, your bridle is wanting to add finesse. You're like it's the adding icing on the cake rather than the cake itself. Yeah.
And I say 90% of the time, 10% of the time, just get by. Like it's just messy, and you just have to figure out what to do. And we need to talk about that more, because I think sometimes horsemanship can be talked in too big of an ideology where they think their messes are not normal. But you know, you work with horses, you're going to have some trouble. And I say, if it's happening inside that 10% or 15%, just take a breath and start again.
Go with it.
Relax.
Oh, messy's normal. The learning curve it's actually even got an official name. It's called the struggle stage of learning. You can't miss it.
Right.
You cannot go. It's impossible to do learning perfectly from the get-go. It is something that improves with understanding and practice. But I love that. That was a really good defense or argument for liberty, is that you don't want your tools of restrainment to actually be restraint. You want them to actually be adding to the conversation, the communication, and not be the barrier or force or those types of things. So that is a very good defense. I approve of that. And basically from this is, in my mind, you've gone, the liberty work you do is more of a test of assurance that you're ready to go to that next step. So I very much approve of that. That's the best argument I've ever heard.
But I would also lean to say is, it isn't actually liberty work if it's about containment. Because what I feel in your heart is that it's like you're kind of like, that's not what the essence of this should be. So then I would lean to say is, then if it's about containment, it actually isn't liberty work. It's more chicken dancing or whatever, right?
Yeah, I call it dancing bears. Dancing bear stuff. Is that whole thing, I struggle with that, because it's just like I do round penning work. but there's so much round penning work. But when people see my round penning work, they go, well, that was different than what I've been. Yeah. It's almost like I want to give different names to it because
Yes.
they're just things like lateral flexion gets taught. I know there's people that don't agree with lateral flexion, but then they do what I call lateral flexion, but I don't do that lateral flexion that other people call lateral flexion. There is liberty. There's a whole lot of things that get like it's a term, but it gets labeled and identified as certain things. So sometimes I think everybody should just come up with your own names for stuff sometimes to identify that it's different or not. Yeah, I suppose my other thing with liberty that I have a big trouble with is, and I know that this is a part of the conversation I want to go with you as well, because I've noticed that you've gone into the whole soundness rabbit hole as well. And so when I see a lot of liberty, I see a lot of unnecessary, like I have this term that says you got to use your circles wisely because your horse only has a finite amount of them before you start hammering their joints or their body. So I see a lot of it as well. There's a lot of small circling and stuff like that. Yeah, so I do look at that, but I do love your framework that you put it in. And it definitely is a framework that I believe that could use your circles wisely as well. So, Josh, can you tell me about your soundness rabbit hole that you've that I can see you've delved down as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of, I look at it with this conversation I call body mapping. And the idea of body mapping and flow lines combine into us learning what motion should feel like as the horse describes it to us. So initially what happens is in this perspective, being able to feel a horse. So I talk about the difference between lightness and softness. So lightness is that the body moves responsively, and softness is that it actually lets go. Because horses don't have collarbones, then what happens is as soon as they have an anxious thought, it inverts the body and it drops them into an inverted position. And I think we all know how that impacts them.
Yeah.
So then what I will say is that most soundness issues actually started emotionally. It's not physical initially. It's that they got bothered. They ended up staying in a certain state. And then they create what I call negative balance. So negative balance is that they're still balanced, but they're in a compensation. Let the compensation stay long enough, and now you have a soundness issue now. And I don't know how many times I've heard it, but the vets are like, there's nothing really wrong here yet. Like there's nothing, your horse is struggling, but there's, nothing exactly wrong yet. And so then these are places where this is actually a mental and emotional and an energetic tension that can be changed through training that actually supports the relaxation of your horse's back and body so that their body can return to correct motion and balance. So the first part is understanding the leadership elements so that we can actually have a horse desire to be in our presence and work with us. The second is defining our aids in such a way where it's speaking to the inside of the horse, not just the physical movement of the outside. And then the third is understanding biomechanics well enough that you're, not putting a horse into twisted frames or, overbent positions and these types of things. So the body mapping is, I have this kind of series of different angles that I take with my lead rope. It's kind of very scientific because my brain I am a scientist as well as I am a feeler.
Yeah.
And I go at all of these different angles that actually target all of the different muscle groups in the horse's body. And the idea is that you actually have to find where the horse is storing their anxious thoughts and their tensions before their thoughts are triggered. So tension to me is what I call dormant behavior. So when you find tension, you have found a behavior in its dormant phase. It hasn't been stimulated yet. Once it's stimulated, it turns into a behavior. And this is why chasing behaviors really doesn't work, because you never dealt with the problem. You were condoning the problem by leaving the tension. Okay, so then the body mapping is getting to a place where you can find these different tensions and that you can find release in those tensions and start placing where they were holding on emotionally, they start letting go of those things. And as you mix in this body mapping approach with structural positioning, like where does the shoulder need to align and does the pull joint open and a variety of different elements, extension of the back, and you keep going back and forth between finding the thing that was tense, that was blocking the proper movement, instead of just pushing for the movement, as you kind of go back and forth with that. And I would also lean to say that I'm working on the mind-space balance online, so the horse can keep showing me how good is my work.
Yeah.
You need that feedback loop as well. So what ends up happening is that you just get horses that were, it happens all the time. I would say almost every single clinic, there's a horse that comes in hitchy or inconsistent or sometimes really unsound, and they leave sound because it had nothing to do with physicality. Like I wouldn't say that I'm doing exercises that are trying to work on a horse's soundness necessarily. I'm just removing all the tension that piled up in a horse. And it was the tension, like you have 25 degrees of tension on this side and 80 on this side. So now the horse goes long, short, long, short, long, short, and you remove all those tensions. And when you know how to isolate those tensions, now you can help your horse stay sound, because again, some soundness is not physical.
Oh no, no. Well, just my little story from that is that the more horses I worked with, there'd be ones that were tricky, right? The ones that were really tricky. And then I started discovering, because of, my close contacts, I was very lucky to work with, good farrier, good vets. I started discovering the alignment of all the difficult ones all had something wrong with them.
Sure.
And sometimes it required the thing that it was broken. It might be the hoof angles were all out, the feet were sore, the hocks actually had arthritis, they were carrying an injury somewhere. That needed to be taken out of the complexity of the system first. Then the training could start happening. And then I also worked out that about 80% of the behavioral cases came to me were just as you described. It was just tension. It was just all the things of that could all be worked out with really good training. But then there were this 20 odd percent that a lot of them could. Tammy El Kayam, who's one of my mentor in the world of understanding the horse's body, she has this saying, which motion is the lotion. So you strip that negative tension from them, you get them relaxed so their body can actually function as it's being designed to do, and that's very therapeutic for them. But then there is this percentage which need to go to the vets. So the only thing is, though, I'd send a lot of horses to the vets, and the vet would come back that they couldn't find out what was wrong. They couldn't think that was wrong with it. And I was like, it's like not every problem can be x-rayed or scanned. That's the problem, as you're saying. It's that. So I took it upon myself. There's just like, I've got to work this stuff out myself. I got very good at being able to look at a horse move and see where that's happening. But that wasn't good enough. It's like I'd have clinics, Josh, where you had one horse that was no good. I would have one that was good, like, and the other, depending on the size of the clinic that I've done over time, I've shrunk my numbers over time, but it was like most of them would be carrying something. And then I realized, no, my job, because I felt like a triage nurse. Referring horses to the farrier, referring horses to that's like, you got to go to the vet first before you come back. I can't do anything until we get that horse looked at. And then I just worked it out. Is like, nah, I got to work out why this is happening in the first place. So we can go from where the root cause is, which is normally, as you've pointed out, the training or handling, whatever, that put that tension into the horse, which is then made the system not function as it's designed. Joints and ligaments and posture not to be how it's designed. So you couldn't get proper physics happening in that beautifully engineered life form, and things will go snap. So it's just like, so I've dived down that to try to work out how to actually do that, how to protect the horse by what we do. And you and I seem very, very aligned with that.
Well, I think we have two kind of issues that we face in our climate right now. And one is a little kind of analogy or story I'll tell, but the other is that we actually live in a climate of amateurs. I would say we're more than 90% amateurs, maybe more than that. Even the people that are now maybe a bit better than the amateurs are not necessarily that far along, and then sharing concepts and ideas in a more polarized perspective because they found something that was good, that was working against the thing they learned, and it's still polarized. It's still so we live in this kind of like amateur polarized space where everybody's kind of, ends up kind of bickering about things where we don't actually have a master that can, bring the clarity. So I have this little analogy that I'll say all the time. It's like, if you went to this master's house and he was able to shed your mind of any preconceived notion about horses, about tack, about principles, about things you love and don't love. And as you walk through the door, everything was gone. And now all that was left was this master holding space to help you understand how to use a snaffle, how to use a shank bit, how a spur, how a whip, how a round pen. And you learned in its most beautiful perfection how all things were used. You know, would you have negative vices to mindsets? But most of us are wrestling through mindsets that have been infused into us through negative function, negative use. And now our opinions are very polarized because we actually aren't settling into the center of, like, let's let the masterful element of a concept be the definition. And if we don't see it being that, then it's okay, because everybody's trying, but it doesn't get to define the base of how I understand that tool to be used. So I have kind of this great desire to purify my understanding of the aids and of the tools by the master's hand and not the amateur's dysfunction. Yeah.
Oh, tell me about it. I don't know if you know much about me, but I regularly cause, at least once a year, I cause what I call a guru quake.
Okay.
Because I stand up against the crazy ideas. Because I don't know about you, Josh, but a lot of the stuff, because I understand how it happens, social media has now allowed this. There's beauty filters, but there's also filters for becoming an authority on horses and being influential and manipulative in marketing, targeting those things within people, what they want. So, and you know, I'm for a long time I just smiled and went along, not wanting to upset anyone. But it kind of, when I started out being chosen, just exactly like you, I was a university academic in pharmacy, but my horse side hustle got bigger than Ben-Hur by choice. So I started training, and back then I was dealing with horses that I'd call were flag fried. They were really, they'd been, you know, had so much respect flagged into them, they were all pulling away from their owners and freaked out. And I was dealing with that. Today I'm dealing with a different thing, and it's actually worse. Is this is kind of do nothing. It's very passive, anti-passive. This whole lot of framework put over a horse, which is just really quite makes the horses all quite neurotic and shut down, or I see it all the time. Are you seeing something similar out there when you're dealing with the public, that these different ideas that float, these, I call them, they're actually got a name. There's a guy called Gadsard, and he came up with the term parasitic ideas. Parasitic ideas that catch on because they sound good and moral and worthy and aligned with things.
It's everything in balance, right?
Yeah.
You need all of these ideas. There's nothing wrong with a flag when it's used well. It's the same with what we were talking about, the snaffle and the shank and the dressage whip and the spurs. They're all okay when they're used well. It's when people get stuck in an idea and they are an amateur and they can't actually apply it with any finesse.
Yes, and then there's these other ideas that catch on. Anyway, sorry, Josh. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that's actually why, you know, because we are living in such an amateur culture, it's just, and so many, you know, being able to use words in a certain way, it plays well to the desire of most people's hearts. Now, horses are not a need anymore. They're just a want, and people desire relationship and connection. And so then I feel like, so to answer your question first, absolutely, I'm seeing it, and it's probably one of the biggest things I'm faced with today in horsemanship as a clinician, and I call it relational debilitation.
Yes.
Now you have so many relational principles, and if the horse is struggling, if the horse is worried, you have to back away, you have to reset them. So the horse's inability to regulate themselves becomes the control mechanism with which you have to live within. So, you know, if they are unable to handle anything, then you have to back away. And I would say it's kind of like gentle parenting for horses. It's kind of like you have to find ways to back away. So the problem is that the group that has heard this the most was actually the group that needed to learn how to stand up more.
Yes.
So then the people that needed to hear that, of like, you know what, give that horse a little bit more time, step back a little bit, are the people that aren't listening to it even a little bit. Like they don't even care to listen to it. They will not. So now I see we have this generation, or this culture of beautiful hearted people who just want the best for their horse. that didn't know how to stand up and have a voice in the first place. And now they've taken on a lot of these mindsets that really settle well in their heart. Like, it sounds really good.
Yeah.
But I always say that that's always my biggest thing is any good idea should help you along the path to your dreams. Any good idea, it should empower you to be able to find some results and be moving forward. And if it's not, even though it's a good idea, it somehow has skewed you off of the flow line, like the truth line. And so I'm seeing it a lot, and I am doing my best in my own way to just try to help people find the middle. You know, it's like, just because it sounds good doesn't mean it as necessarily the true line to finding a positive product.
Yeah. I find it quite, you know, and these things, ironically, they're sold as being horse first. You know, and it's not, no, you're not. That is not horse first. That is abdicating your responsibility to the horse, and you know, projecting human concepts and frameworks onto the horse that are not fair. It's not horse at all. It's abdicating your responsibility to step up. I want to give people the tools and skill them up so that they can see things, they can interpret things, and they're not just being reactive to how the horse is making them feel. Yet this is being taken out, and we have this whole concept. That's why I really respect you, because they say things like connection before training or relationship before training. And it's like, mate, how can you have a relationship with anyone without understanding and being able to actually communicate with that other creature? How? So anyway, how do you handle it? What are you doing for the cause?
Well, number one is that I'm not leaving what I'm doing with horses. So number one, so this is one of the biggest pieces is I would say that most of the people that have the biggest opinions are doing the least. So they're not actually doing anything with their horses.
No.
You know, and so that's always a big thing for me. It's like, okay, so it sounds beautiful, but what is the fruit? So is the fruit a social media post? Is the fruit, now that you're convinced and a following has increased, or do you see the fruit? And I'm saying this around everybody. I don't care. I want to watch the fruit. So I have friends that are doing everything. I have tons of friends in rodeo. I have tons of friends in the our positive community. Like, I don't even care. It's like, I'm not attached to any of it. I just want to watch your fruit. And if that fruit is interesting to me, then I'll follow that line, you know, because the mindset of being able to see that. So number one for me, so we have 12 horses right now that we're working between myself and my kids on a variety of levels. I have project horses, I'm starting horses, and I want to have kind of more finished horses around, so that there's always a visible experience that you can see what my fruit produces. Like that. Yeah. We're getting into a place where more and more trainers have less horses. They have less going on. And it's easy because if I'm just to sit here and tell you all about what's not working for you and your horse, if I'm not working my own horses through stuff, I will become less empathetic to you, because I'll get more and more critical because I'm less and less close to how hard it is. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not close enough to it anymore. So that's just my personal thing. And again, it should be empowering. Everything should be empowering. So then if you're taking a belief, but now you can't leave the yard with your horse, sure, it's a great belief, but it's not necessarily bearing fruit. So then it's like, it's a little bit like sweet poison.
Yes,
you know, it's a little bit like sweet poison.
I found that very true. I've got a sensitive little chestnut gelding called Roger, and I love him to bits, and I sometimes get down some rabbit holes and find different clinicians and instructors and stuff, but I need someone who's able to help me get him more confident with the world. He is the type of horse that his world can shrink very quickly. So I need, it's very quick to understand when something's working or not working, because his world grows. When he's having a good time, he's happy to go out and about and do stuff. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes his world shrinks and he gets smaller and smaller in what he's able to do.
Yeah. And if we let too much space, so I say, so the way I look at this is by stepping back all the time, what you're doing is you're putting the anxieties as the control mechanism. So now the horse's inabilities and anxieties become the control level, but without showing them and helping them, really what we're doing is we're allowing their worries to become the level that they can grow. And so I say it's like leaving a 2-year-old alone in the kitchen and expecting cake.
Yeah.
Okay? The level that they have is only going to produce what they can produce without mentorship. Now, mentorship is this kind of like, it's a little bit harder. And the problem is because it can sometimes not be as pretty as always stepping back. Like always stepping back and watching your horse settle is it's very drawing because it's like, okay, that's better. But what we're doing is we're slowly slipping away from empowerment. So if we can get to a place where we can very respectfully have more challenging conversations, that's how I look at it. It's like, if you're going to grow in a relationship, you better be able to have respectful, hard conversations. I can ask you hard questions and I can do it in respect and love, and we can disagree and work at it. But I can mentor my horse through the process of their struggles. And I'm like, I totally get it. I hear you. I hear that this is your struggle. But if we stay in this small world, you're going to stay weak too. It's not going to help you to do this. So anyways, again, that comes back to mindset, right?
Yeah, and understanding what to go, because a lot of these things, I see it. It's almost like there's a plan to it. It's like, because they're tends to come from amateurs, you can tell they don't have necessarily a lot of experience, because they're making claims where there is not one tool or one way that I'll throw away. Because
Right.
you meet enough horses, they'll humble you, because it's not up
Yeah.
to you to decide what's going to help that horse. It depends on
That's
the
right.
horse, what's required to change that horse's mind and its thought. And number two, it depends on the context. So if you
Totally.
can only work a horse in like a nice sunny day with a gentle breeze, and they're completely sound and have had a level of training on them already, good on you. Go and make these big claims about a tool or what's right or what's wrong. Because ethics is an argument. It's not a thing. It's not a tool.
Right.
It's not a belief. It's a situational argument for what is the best for the outcome of that horse, short term, long term.
Yep.
If ethics was not stressing anything, we would never have surgery or chemotherapy in healthcare, because both those things make you sicker to make you better. Anyway, I could go on. But yeah, I find that this is what I see happen is people go down this rabbit hole with this promise and this hope that if we can respect the horse's no, or give them a choice, and be gentle, kind humans, that the horse will see this, they'll feel heard, and they will hand themselves over to you. But what happens is that eventually everything they do, the people get more and more shamed, because what they do with whatever, they don't get any real technical help or any structure, because that's capitalism. That is controlling to have that on a horse. You're taking away their autonomy, their sense of agency, because you're just a mechanical trainer that embraces violence. That what happens is they end up failing at doing the thing, because the thing doesn't work, because all horses do need something different, a level of skill. The person does less and less and less with the horse. So the horse ends up leading a sedentary lifestyle, which is the most destructive thing for a creature. It's the most destructive thing for us. Then their whole entire world shrinks. They physically deteriorate as gravity drags them into the ground.
As do all things when we
Yes.
start shrinking and
Yeah.
shrinking and shrinking.
Yeah. And so, but then what happens is that you're just locked into the Zoom calls where we can sit around in our cognitive dissonance, trying to, making ourselves feel better, that we just discovered our horse was too traumatized, and they chose not to be ridden, to try to make themselves feel better. And then the person's life is stuck at looking at negativity. See these horses all distressed. Now, that's a human thing you can do to a human being. If you focus their mind on seeing negative all the time and framing everything as trauma and bad, you will actually literally give that person depression.
Yeah. Well, it's focus.
Yeah.
That's the red car theory, right?
Yes. And it's
Yeah.
just like cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And because you're an amateur, you've got everyone off their horse, which is good.
Well, and I noticed too something that a lot of times horses are what happens with people is that we deal with a lot of people that have gone through life, and when they look at their horses, they want to have a better relationship. So they've been very much triggered by certain negatives in life. So then then they want this good relationship with their horse. So then they are now, to want this good relationship with their horse, something that someone says targets a negative that's happened and they want the opposite. So now defending this belief is actually like, if they let go of this polarized belief, now they're actually accepting the truth of what, like, that negative that happened. So
Yeah.
now they cannot let go of this idea. They have to stand on it, or they are agreeing with the trauma that happened in their life. And I think that's why this is, again, for me, why it's so important to kind of create theory and mindset where we can kind of get to a neutral place. Because
Yeah.
if you're now arguing with a person like that, is pretty much like saying whatever happened to them in their life, that person was validated, they were right, their hurt of you was okay. And that's why they stand so hard on a belief or a, and I think that's where so much mindset work like this, because I always ask that to people. It's like, is the belief you have based on a negative you don't want, or a truth you've learned by empowered horses?
Yeah.
So is it
I
a
like
negative you
that.
don't want? So I see it with a lot of the R positive and the R negative dissidents. It's like, R positive, like, are you inspired to do this just because you love it, or because you saw someone do something with pressure that you don't like?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the other way around too, right? Like, a lot of the pressure people, it's like, I will never do that because all those horses do is bite you and, push you around. It's like, that's not true either.
Yeah, because
But it's, again, negative functions.
that's right. But it's the judgment of the extremes, the worst of the
Mhm.
worst. Like with me, I will track down, go find me, I went and found the best goddamn clicker trainer to study,
Right.
and then I find the best. I have learned gold from all the particular disciplines. They all have gold. You never judge the worst. You
Right.
always see every case as a potential bad case of that, but I suppose
Yeah.
the more you learn about training, the more you can actually make those judgments.
Totally.
And having that balanced view and drawing people into being able to understand the balance.
I think that's why it's so important for us to judge information through empowered horse relationships.
Yeah.
So to me, very few people get any insight when they talk to me about horses until I watch it in action with a horse. So there's a horse that gets to say this idea is working, but in an empowered way, not just in a standing around way. Like, that horse doing something. Like, how is your relationship? Like, I think about it, if we were to take personal growth information about relationships, but it doesn't work in a marriage.
No.
Like, it doesn't work. Like, how is it that we can get to a place where we can listen to this stuff, but it's actually not showing fruit, anyways.
Yeah.
It's like empowered relationships get to decide.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got to have the tools for that, in my opinion. The other reason why I think this happens, and I want to ask you about this just at the end, I think another reason why this has become a popular kind of message out there, and for people to pay for this popular message, is that teaching people is hard. People are messy. Look at all the effort that you describe that you go. You talk to people first so you can kind of work out their patterns. That's hard work. And then you got to work them through what I call the messy middle, Brene Brown's messy middle, the struggle stage of learning. It's not pretty, and it makes your thing when you're doing people judge, that's Shirley Appleton's method. That's a bit crap, because they're doing it, they're being messy, normal, messy people. And so it doesn't look good on social media.
Right.
So much better if you get them to do something that's nothing, that is less messy.
Right.
So there's two reasons that I see. There's the people that are actually incompetent or not skilled, they're amateurs, okay, getting a voice from social media. And then you get a whole other that have found, like, that are just over teaching people because it's so hard, that they found another way in to make money by targeting these particular conversations. So how hard is it to teach people? Do you run into that?
I love the art of it. I would say that I like this. I like science and I like art. And I think there's actually an art to communication. So I love being able to navigate through that with people. Being able to figure out where a person is struggling as quick as possible is, to me, like an important art of being a clinician or a teacher. Some clinicians, or let's just say some communicators, some teachers, are just trying to get you to do a thing. Others are trying to get you to believe a philosophy. And for me, I want to understand where you're coming from as quickly as possible so I can give you the information that's going to help you. Because when people come to us, I don't know what they need initially. Like I have a lot to offer. I have a lot of things, a lot of things I could tell you, but I don't just want to spout information that has no bearing to what you need. So I think it's that, like, the swiftness of being able to listen in a very calculated way. So I'm really trying to feel where they're coming from so I can kind of align the teaching. And it's the reason why I generally teach individual lessons, because I really want to stay to task with being able to help why they came. The more people that I take on, it makes it very challenging not to just give people content or versus like letting them really feel the difference. So that's a big deal to me. I want people to leave feeling like they were impacted, like something inside of their core is different now because of time spent.
Yeah, you change their reality by teaching them to see something about the horse, about themselves, about their mindset, and become awareness like that. Josh Nichols, you are not a guru. You're a horseman. You're a teacher. You're a master of your craft. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. Now, can you please tell us about how people can find out more about you?
Yeah, thank you. Obviously doing clinics, do that all over North America. I'm going to go to New Zealand this year. Excited about that. That's been something we've been wanting to do for a long time. So that people can see there on my website, joshnichol.com. We have content on YouTube, and obviously we're trying to support people on social media as well. And then I have a membership site on my website where we're just sharing content. So I try to be very connected with that. We post new stuff, and then I do live calls so people can ask questions. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges of membership sites and space, is to stay dialed in and to keep staying connected to people. So we try to do that quite a bit. And then we train horses and sell horses, and we're just trying to build up the market in the ways that we can support it.
I really appreciate that no matter like what you're doing, you still got a hand in it and you're still working horses and doing stuff. I really respect that.
Thank you.
Now, do you also do mentoring of other professionals?
I used to a little more. We used to, there was a time where I was taking people in quite a bit. And honestly, we just got so busy. My kids and my wife are a big deal to me, and we were just getting spread too thin. So I pulled back quite a bit, and I've made it quite a bit more just about my own teaching. And my daughter's 19 now, and my son is 16, and my youngest is going to be 14. And I just want to spend as much time with them. I know that window is not long, and I would love to be able to build relationships with them at this stage that kind of last a lifetime. And so we've pulled back quite a bit and just tried to prioritize what we can do. It shifted a little bit with the kids because my kids are extremely competitive. They love to get out there and do stuff with their horses. So, being able to walk with them through that. And it's been really neat. My son wasn't even into it until he started, competing with some of his friends. And that was then what drew him to me, because, my big thing with my kids was that I didn't care how they rode, as long as they were respectful and kind, and they could do whatever they wanted. But then they started having troubles. They were losing, or things would come up, and then they're like, Dad, can I talk to you about something? So it was so cool how that kind of idea or approach actually paid off in the end, because it wasn't like, you have to do it like this, you have to look like that. I don't even care. And I also believe in the resilience of the horse. Like, they're so able to handle so much. And, we can make them very soft in a negative way if we're not careful. So anyways, it's been fun.
Yeah, no, it's been great
awesome.
talking to you. Thank you so much. And we'll wrap it up there. But thank you so much for your time and sharing these really cool insights.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been a great discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you.